Since her first picture in 1916, she just hasn't stopped working. And I don't think you've any intention of doing so, have you, Miss Love?
Oh, no.
You were chuckling marvellously. Was it nice to see those pictures again?
Oh, yes, lovely. Very nice. I was trying to be quiet, but it was very nice to see them.
You know, when one hears about Hollywood these days, you have a lot of stuff from the gossip columnists in a way, and it sounds rather bitchy and rather nasty, but your book has nothing like that in it. Was it very different then?
Well, it was not so different then, but I mean, I think enough has been written about that side of town, you know, that side of Hollywood. And actually, you can find the same thing wherever you look for it. You can find it in London. You don't have to go to Hollywood.
But you did actually have a very wholesome image, didn't you?
Oh, yes. Well, the Griffith girls, the leading ladies, you see, were always very sweet little girls who lived next door, you know, with hoop skirts, more or less, you see, and bonnets, sunbonnets, you know. This was the image, you see, so...
Were you chaperoned then in those days?
Oh, rather, my goodness, yes. I remember we got into terrible trouble one time because we went on a publicity stunt, which everybody assumed was perfectly all right to do. There was a race, you know, a cross-country race, you see, automobile, you know. And so all of us went down and we were photographed with all the drivers, and of course all this was very interesting. But we nearly all got fired because we had no chaperone.
Oh,
and it was broad daylight in the middle of the day and all that, but it didn't mean anything.
And there was no arm round you or anything?
Oh, they were livid. And I mean, it was so funny because the boys were so busy about their driving. I mean, they wouldn't have bothered about us anyway. I
saw a picture of you in the book with two baseball players and you were signing their autographs. Did the stars go to a lot of openings of Fates and big occasions like that?
Well, we were never allowed to from my studio, that is from the Griffith studio. But of course, you know, I only knew my own studio. I don't know what went on in the other studios. But for some reason, they had me do it. But I think, you see, I didn't come from the theatre. And I think that was probably the reason. They wanted me to get used to seeing people and meeting people and being photographed and this kind of thing. You know.
Tell me about your studio, what it was like in those days, because there were no such things, for instance, as makeup artists, were there?
Oh, no.
So
no,
you did your own?
We all made ourselves up. And I remember the leading lady, or the villainess, rather, in the first film I made, The Flying Torpedo. And Lucille Young was the heavy, you see, the heavy lady. And she said, always make yourself up. Don't let a maid do that. A maid, not makeup artists, you know. We didn't have such things, of course. But she said, don't ever be dependent upon a maid for that. And everybody was taking for granted that I was going to have maids and things. You see, I was playing a very lowly part in the film. But
how specifically, then, did you find out about various characters and how you would make yourself look right for the picture?
Well, actually, you just kept on trying, you see, and you'd learn from other people. Other actors, they'd say, well, try a number 5 and then mix number 9 with it, you know, and then put the powder, the certain kind of powder over and all this, you see. And so we learned to do it ourselves. Except, of course, Lon Chaney, you know, I mean, he was marvelous. And if we had a special sort of aging thing, suddenly becoming 106 years old, you know, then they had makeup people come from downtown.
But what about you at the Chinese part you played? What did you do?
Yes, well, I played a Chinese, and I think even that I did my own makeup, you know, with the pulling my eyes back and all that. But they got a hairdresser for me, a Chinese hairdresser. Well, they had to, because in the beginning of it, I was a little wild lady, you see, from the hills, you know, and with the bees and birds and all that. And I had, of course, long hair. It was before we had our hair cut, you see. So it was fairly long, you know. But it went fairly thick. And it was, of course, had to be black. So I didn't know what to put on it. I didn't know any kind of dye that would wash out, except mascara. You know what we put on our eyelashes?
I do.
Well, that's what I put on my hair.
What a painstaking job that must have been.
Well, it was not only painstaking, but it was painful because I couldn't do anything with it then, you see. I slept with a towel around it because it came off on everything, you know. Yes.
How long did you have it like that?
Well, not for so long, because they got the Chinese hairdresser for me. And then she was wonderful. Oh, she was marvelous.
What was in your minds during those silent movies? Were you actually speaking the words that were on the captions?
Well, yes. What we did, particularly in our studio, because it was a very serious-minded studio about the whole thing, you know, the D.W. Griffith studio. And we used to do more or less what the method people do now. We would improvise, but for real. I mean, we would say only what you would say under such circumstances, you know, unless it was a cue for somebody to come in, for a door to open, or a shot to be fired, or something like that. Then you had to speak the cue. You had to speak.
I suppose you had to remember, too, that people could lip read if you were saying the
yes.
wrong words.
Oh, yes, no matter what you did. If somebody, for instance, called you a name or something, you see, and said, your dress is, the pins in your dress is getting in my hand, you'd soon hear about it, you know. They'd be in touch with the studio, you see.
Yes, indeed. Well, it must have been rather a lot of fun. But did you ever send yourselves out while you were acting?
Well, I'm afraid we did sometimes, but we had to be awfully careful because the front office wouldn't like it either, you know. I mean, it cost too much money to make films, to laugh at them.
Let's go back to the beginning and how you got into the movies in the first place. Was it something you'd always wanted to do from a young child, or not?
Oh, no, no, no. You know, I've told that story so often, though. Are you sure you want to hear it again?
Absolutely positive.
Well, it's a very funny one. That's why lots of people, I think, want to hear. No, I wanted to get a job for the summer, you see, and my classmates had got jobs as sort of nursery maids or cash girls or messenger boys, you know. So my mother said, well, I wasn't trained to do anything. There was nothing left for me to do but to act. So my father had met Tom Mix, you know, and Tom Mix had seen me. I'd been out with my father one day visiting. And he said, if ever she wants to go into films, bring about. You know, I'll see what I can do, you see. So anyway, we went out. A friend of ours went with me. My mother was working, so she couldn't go, and she went with me. And
you went on the wrong day because you had a cold when you should have gone.
Quite right, yes, because I'd been ill the day I was supposed to go. And without thinking, you know, we didn't give it a thought. We just went, you see, with no any sort of what's
appointment.
The word? Appointment, yes. So anyway, we got there, and they said Mr. Mix was not in. Well, I don't know whether he was or not, but they told me to go next door to the wardrobe lady. So we went next door to the wardrobe lady, and she said, well, you know, this is a very rough place. They make cowboy pictures here, and they're very, very rough. And if you want to go into films, you go to D.W. Griffith. He's the one that made all the big stars. So my friend and I said, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? That's quite right. So
you got a streetcar down the road.
So we got a streetcar down the road and went to the Griffith studio, and I asked to see Mr. Griffith. And fortunately, when I asked, he happened to go through the lobby and heard me ask for his office and knew I was looking for a job and went in and waited, bless his heart, for me to come to the door.
I think he liked your honesty, saying that you just wanted a job for the summer.
Well, I think that was it, because, you know, everybody was always saying yes to him, you see. However, he was the sweetest man in the world. He was so kind and nice, you know.
So you then did a test, didn't you?
That's right.
Directed.
He said, yes, come inside and we'll take a test and see. Well, it was an audition, really. And then he said, at the end of that, he said, well, you come back tomorrow, we'll make a test. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm in school tomorrow. So he said, well, when would it be convenient? So I said, oh, Saturday's all right, because school finishes Friday, so I could come Saturday. So that's what we did.
That's marvellous. And you passed that test, and was a big production job done on you then, as somebody new to the studio? Did they groom you a lot then?
Well, what they did, you see, all his people were from the theatre anyway, and they'd come out from New York all together on hunk sort of thing, you know. And so an awful lot of it rubbed off on me. I mean, I was very quickly picked up on anything I did that was wrong. For instance, I can't now walk in front of a camera. I know better than to do that, you see. If I don't care who it is that's around, I duck under it, you know.
I've noticed that.
Well,
and I also know that one of the things was an actor told you that you had to walk into a set and you had to feel the warmth of the light from behind.
Yes, this is quite true, and it is true too. He was directing my test, and he was a very good actor himself, a very well-known actor at the time, Wilfred Lucas. And he said he stepped from the back into a light, into a spotlight, hitting him in the back, you see. And he stopped and he said, now you'll get so you feel that light, and you know when that hits you, and then you play your scene there.
Marvellous. Well, that was obviously learning the techniques as you went along, and your clothes and how you walked, your poise, everything came into that, didn't it?
That's right, it all did, yes. And Mr. Griffith would say, watch, you know, how people behave and what they do. And also I worked with Doug Fairbanks, you know, senior, not junior, but Junior came visiting one day with his governess on the set. Oh yes, he did indeed. But
talkies came in then. Now that must have been quite a transition for people to make, and a lot of people went down then, didn't they?
Well, I'm afraid they did. I think it was silly for that to happen, because with patience, I think, you know, they could have learned the same as anybody else can learn.
Was it their voices that were wrong often?
Well, this is what it was supposed to be, yes. And of course, everybody was so tense and so terrified at losing a job, you know, and all this, that they couldn't relax in front of a camera. As I say it, with patience, they would have learned. I'm certain they would.
How did you yourself make the transition?
Well, at the time, my agent said he was going to get me ready for musical comedy in the East, you see. So I was not from the theatre at all. I'd had no stage experience. So they made a little review around me, a company that did this on the coast. And we went for 16 weeks. I went up and down the coast in the big cities and the big cinemas, you know, and learning my trade, you see.
And then, of course, you made the second talkie, didn't you? I mean, the Broadway Melody was one of those very famous films.
Yes, that's right. Well, it was the first one that had all sound, all dancing, singing, talking, the lot, you see.
Miss Ivor, casting director once said that you were the most useful actress in the world. Your career has spanned many years. Now, what's the secret of it?
Well, I don't know. I just keep working. I think I think there are lots of me around, you know. I think there are an awful lot of actresses
You never
around.
look back to yesterday, really, do you?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Good gracious, no.
You
Oh,
think
no, I
that
wouldn't
today...
even go back yesterday.
Really?
No, as good a day as it was. And it was a whopper yesterday.
Part of the whopping times involved a ukulele, and we're going to have a look at a bit of film now when you're playing the ukulele.
Oh, yes, I must tell you about, I think the ukulele you're going to see, it's not my old one, you know, but Ben Lyon one time wanted to learn the ukulele. And so I said, fine, I'd teach him, you see. So bless his heart, he said, if you do, I'll give you a new uke. Well, now, bless his heart, he first bought the ukulele and gave it to me before he learned his lessons. And then he went away and I went away, so he never did learn, but I've got the uke.
You're a lady of many talents. And did it take you long to learn the ukulele yourself, then?
Well, no, everybody was playing it at that time. I mean, you know, nobody could read music or anything like that. I still can't, you see, at least not for the uke. I read for the piano, but only for myself. I don't play publicly.
But you entertained the cast on various films with that, didn't you?
Ah, yes, well, but then we all had ukuleles, and we had music anyway, you know, atmospheric music, you see, and we would play with them when we were not actually in the scene, and everybody was singing, and it was very nice, you know.
Well, I think the sight of you playing the ukulele, the sight of you here today looking marvellous, your eyes as big and wide as ever, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the programme, and thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you very much for asking me.